Destiny. One of my favorite MMOs, if not favorite game overall, of all time. While a great game in its own right, its much improved sequel is now out. Also, Bungie admitted there will be no further updates to Destiny 1, so I chose to make a countdown list regarding Destiny. And I decided to make one based on my favorite thing to do in Destiny, strikes. There was nothing I enjoyed more when I had spare time than to jump into Destiny and go straight to the strike playlist and strike away. Howdy folks, I'm Scoryth, the Crimson Renegade. I present another countdown episode, this time featuring the top 10 Destiny strikes. For this list, I considered all the strikes from the entirety of Destiny from day one and all of the expansions and updates that followed. Additionally, I considered the PlayStation exclusive strikes, so Xbox players may see entries on this list that you may not have seen. Finally, the last Destiny expansion, The Dawning, released stronger, harder modified versions of the mini strikes called Revisited strikes. These were also considered for the list, so both the original and revisited strikes may appear. So let's get started. Number 10. The Sunless Sell. Starting off the list is one of the longer strikes in the game. The length really isn't so much in the time taken, but more about distance traveled. Located on Oryx's Dreadnought, you don't have the luxury of your Sparrow to speed up travel time. You've got to hoof it the whole way. Fighting off Hive and taking along the way, you reach the first objective room where you have to use Ghost on 2 pillars that unlock the door to the next area. After fighting off Taken in the next room, you can move on to the Shrieker room. At least that's what I call it. Why? There's Shriekers everywhere. That's why. After you make it through there, either by killing all the Shriekers or running like your life depends on it, which it actually does, you reach a bridge with a swarm of Thrall heading your way. Finally, you make it to the boss room. Dark and very hard to see, this is what makes this strike unique. With only the occasional flash from grenades or rockets lighting him up, Alak-Hul, the Darkblade, slowly stalks you and your fire team, with his only warning being his huge axe slamming on your head. As if that's not hard enough, he vanishes now and then, sending hordes of Thrall and cursed Thrall at you. This strike, and more specifically the boss, always was stress-inducing because you didn't always know when or where Alak-Hul was going to spawn. So fun! Number 9. The Shadow Thief. This is another unique strike because this is the only time you fight the strike's boss multiple times before reaching the final room. Starting on the moon near the Temple of Crato, you have to kill or run from 2 Shriekers standing guard at the entrance. Then you have to fight through some Hive before reaching a door that was previously inaccessible until the release of the House of Wolves DLC. Through that door, you find a room filled with Fallen. Upon clearing said room, including the reinforcements, Taniks the Scarred, the strike's boss, makes his first appearance. After dealing enough damage to him, he retreats to a nearby gravity lift and vanishes. You, of course, follow him and end up aboard Taniks' ketch, hovering over the moon's surface. Making your way through the ketch into the first room, you fight some more Fallen, and poof! Taniks shows up again to harass you, and again, fleeing after dealing some damage to him. In the second room on the ketch, you might think you take Taniks on again, especially when you hear him blast at you just before a walker falls from the ceiling. This is where the strike gets awesome. You're trapped in a rather small room that feels even smaller because there's a massive walker in the room with you. When you finally take down said walker, a door opens at the end of the hallway. Taniks appears again. This time, he lures you down the hallway and into the boss room for the final confrontation. Number 8. The Nexus Revisited. While the original version of the Nexus is rather uninteresting, the Revisited strike made great improvements. Like other Revisited strikes, the difficulty and number of enemies that appear are greatly increased. Also, you have to deal with the randomness of either fighting the Fallen, similar to the original version, or the Taken. Even then, your first objective is varied. You either kill all the servitors with the Fallen spawn, or you have to defeat all the Taken captains or destroy all Blights if it's the Taken. That was a great way to mix things up. After completing whatever objective you need to do in the first room, you must push your way through enemies until you reach the next to last room, where you have a large Vex barrier blocking the way. The only way to remove it? An arc charge held at a pedestal. Carry that charge to a pedestal near the barrier, then stand on the nearby sink plate until the barrier drops. Of course, the Vex, or Taken, whichever one spawns, won't just let you stand there and relax. Oh no. Once you clear the barrier and make your way to the final boss room, you get one of 2 possible bosses. One option, the original Secrian appears, but with an upgraded chassis, according to the Vanguard. While the boss itself doesn't require any special strategies to beat beyond shooting it a lot, it does cast a debuff on the fire team called Marked by the Void, at which point you must find a pillar of light and cleanse yourself before bad things happen. Alternately, if you get the Taken version of the Hydra, at certain points of its health it will erect an impenetrable barrier, but also creates an Aegis relic similar to the one seen in the Vault of Glass. One of the fire team must grab that relic, wait for the super to charge, then use it to shatter the Hydra's barrier, once again making it vulnerable to attack. These new mechanics really made this strike quite an enjoyable one. Number 7. Septics Perfected. Another revisited strike, this version of the Devil's Lair strike changes all of the Fallen to the Devil Splicers that came with the Rise of Iron expansion. While the majority of the mechanics of the strike didn't change, the enemies certainly did, and so did their numbers. In the next to last area, the Devils drop a Perfected Walker to stop you from breaching the Lair. After that, the final boss, Septics Prime, now Septics Perfected, awaits in the last area. However, it doesn't just let you shoot him until he pops. The Splicers had a trick up their sleeves for this one. At certain points of its health, Septics powers up an elemental shield that makes him completely immune to all damage, even damage from matching elements. The only way to pierce that shield is to locate and kill a Splicer captain that is carrying a Scorch cannon of the matching element. Once done, and you've picked up the cannon, shoot Septics, its shield drops, and it's vulnerable to conventional attack. Septics rotates all 3 elements through, causing the fire team to have to do this a total of 3 times. All the while, Splicer reinforcements continue flowing in. Hectic, but so much fun. Number 6. The Shadow Thief Revisited. While the original Shadow Thief strike had its own points of interest, which got it on this list, the revisited version upped the stakes. A lot. While the randomness of which enemies you dealt with does exist in this strike, my favorite is when both the Hive and Fallen, which by the way are now all Devil Splicers, are battling each other in almost every room you come across. From the Gravity Lift room all the way to the Walker room, it's a 3-way battle among the Guardians, Splicers, and the Hive. This obviously increases the number of enemies in each area, which is one of the biggest things I love about strikes. The more enemies to kill, the better. Also, the Walker in the next to last room is a perfected Walker, and Tenix himself is also perfected, augmented by Siva. Finally, each time you encounter Tenix, he changes the element of his cannon, and he is much meaner. Much, much meaner. Oh, by the way, did I mention that every time he teleports to a different area in the final room, he spawns Siva nodes that make him completely invulnerable? Yeah, that happens. Those Siva nodes have to be destroyed before you can hurt Tenix. Good luck with that. Number 5. Echo Chamber. This is the only strike, at least at the time of this video's production, that remains a PlayStation exclusive, unavailable to Xbox players. The only strike with a complex mechanic that persists throughout the entire strike. Spawning on Venus at the entrance to the Vault of Glass, your fire team proceeds to Campus 9, where you must battle enemies, either the Taken or Fallen, but that's not all. Under the research station is a pedestal holding an arc charge. One of your fire team must carry this arc charge to a barrier nearby that forbids passage. Once clear, the fire team may move on, but is once again held back by another barrier that can only be removed again by an arc charge. To wake the boss, Theosian Restorative Mind, you must move an arc charge from one pedestal to another. Then the giant harpy happily wakes up and flies to the location of the second pedestal. Once there, it closes up and becomes immune to all damage. Once again, 2 pedestals appear, one with an arc charge, of course located right below the boss by the way, and the charge must be moved from pedestal to pedestal again. At that point, it lowers its guard, becomes vulnerable to attack, and moves to the other pedestal. You must repeat this process multiple times until you've defeated the boss. But that's not all. Theosian has a hidden attack. After about the 3rd time he's been moved, once the charge is moved to the second pedestal, and before it starts to head that way, Theosian counts down for an attack called Medusa's Stare. This attack instantly kills, or at least severely injures, anyone who happens to be in the boss's line of sight when the countdown reaches 0. Oh, just to make things a little more claustrophobic, the boss continuously moves the walls of the room around, limiting your space to hide and fight. Total fun. Number 4. The Undying Mind. Another PlayStation exclusive strike, this one was one of a few to be eventually released for the Xbox as well. Overall, this strike doesn't have much that is very special. Very similar to most other strikes, this strike requires a lot of killing enemies along the way toward the boss. What makes this strike particularly special is what I call Precursor Hallway. After clearing the barriers that allow you to continue past the first room, you reach a hallway that spawns a huge amount of precursor Vex. This area I really love because if you coordinate your fire team well enough, it can be a cornucopia of super attacks. The precursors are all majors, the ones with the gold health bars, and super kills usually drop 2 or 3 orbs per enemy killed. So, a well-placed Fist of Havoc or Nova Bomb can cost a massive collection of orbs for the fire team. Even better, a large group of precursors caught in a Tethering Shadow Shot or a Stormcaller Storm Trance. Precursor Hallway just basically becomes a farmhouse filled with orbs of light. Oh, and there's usually a Cyclops at the top of the hill pounding your fire team with blasts. Just thought I'd mention that too. The final boss of this strike really isn't that amazing, just a large Hydra with 3 rotating shields instead of 1. However, once you've beaten its health down enough, it calls for reinforcements. Precursor reinforcements! Orbs of light! Orbs of light! Orbs of light! I like orbs of light. Number 3. Will of Crota. This Earth-based strike features huge numbers of Fallen and Hive, and when I mean huge numbers, I do mean huge numbers. Starting at the Forgotten Shore and heading into the Skywatch building from the curved road, there are Fallen packed in the first room. Snipers on each wall, sword-wielding captains, and waves of shanks. This room has targets everywhere. By the way, did I mention this is the first room? After clearing a majority of the Fallen out, the Hive decide to make their appearance and swarm you with thralls, knights, and acolytes. Once you finally clear the room of all enemies, the laser fence barrier blocking your way out is conveniently removed, but with the cost of another swarm of enemies behind it. Up the stairs to the next area, even more snipers, sword captains, and invisible vandals stand in your way. And since those weren't enough, Fallen skiffs show up every now and then to drop even more Fallen, including a Baron. Oh, don't forget there's a sniper vandal standing above the entrance to that room where you just were. You missed that guy, he won't miss you. Now, with that cleared, the fire team moves on to the public area of the Skywatch and into the Hive Cedar that leads to the Jovian complex. Once your ghost opens the door, you make your way toward the final room. There, Omnigull herself is waiting for you. But can you attack her? Most likely not, as she sends a ton of thrall and sword knights at you while she escapes. Then, you must fight through an uphill gauntlet of Hive enemies determined to stop you from reaching Omnigull. This includes more sword knights, cursed thralls, wizards, and a boomer knight. Oh, and how could I forget ogres? Once you manage to survive that onslaught and reach the final boss room, Omnigull waits inside. But it's not going to be easy to get to her, as constantly spawning Hive minions flow in. While this all may sound like I'm complaining, this is what I love about the strike. The sheer numbers of enemies to kill. I'm fairly certain no other strike spawns this many enemies in the normal flow of battle. There's been times I've finished this strike and all 3 fire team members had 100 plus kills. That is awesome! Number 2. Will of Crota Revisited. As I've said already, Revisited strikes up the difficulty and increase the number of enemies. And since I've said this strike is one of my favorites because of the number of enemies, it only makes sense that the Revisited version gets on this list. The randomness of the Revisited strikes means that you could encounter the Fallen as seen before, but also could encounter the Hive in the first room. Not just a few acolytes either. Wizards, ogres, and knights are on deck and are as tough as nails. In the second area where the array is, the Hive have placed boomer knights in place of the Fallen sniper vandals. Just to add even more targets, there's 2 shriekers out in the open area where the tomb ships appear, dropping even more Hive. Once you fight through all that and finally reach the Jovian complex, there's a random chance to encounter the Fallen on the way to the final room, including servitors. In the final room, the doors that lead out are closed, trapping you in the room with Omnigull, unlike the original strike. The fight here also has been changed. At certain points during the battle, Omnigull laughs and vanishes, spawning hordes of Hive. Sword knights, boomer knights, cursed thralls, and ogres are presented for your killing pleasure. Oh, and let's not forget all the little green fog spots that slow guardians, but buff the Hive that pass through them, including Omnigull herself. Yeah, tons of fun. Number 1. The Devil's Lair. While I've mentioned that my most favorited strikes are the ones that spawn the largest number of enemies to kill, this entry is the anomaly. The Devil's Lair is not my favorite strike because of the number of enemies. In fact, this strike has perhaps the fewest enemies of them all. The reason this is my favorite strike is because it is the very first one in the game, therefore the first one I ever did, and it left a mark on me. A level 8 Earth Strike, I first played this strike at level 7, which, needless to say, was extremely difficult. This difficulty, while only slightly frustrating, really introduced me to how much fun I had with these types of missions. You spawn in the rocket yard and head into the complex. After clearing the hive and fallen out, Ghost begins shutting down the laser fences. On the last fence, a fallen boss appears, and once killed, can move on. In the next area, called the Blast, you encounter a walker. I wasn't exactly sure how powerful this enemy was the first time I played with it. I'll admit, when it pointed its laser at me, I didn't really know what it was about to do. I didn't expect the follow-up cannon blast. It blew me apart. Needless to say, there were a lot of expletives that spilled from my mouth when that happened. Then, I made my way into the final area with the first look at a massive servitor, Septics Prime. That was a huge boss, at least at the time. The memories. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this countdown of the top 10 Destiny strikes. If you like this video, leave a like to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated when new videos release, and feel free to share with a friend. Check out the links at the end of the video for other countdowns and more of my stuff, and thanks so much for watching. I'm Scoryth, the Crimson Renegade. I'll see you later.